You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. Today, we're covering some breaking news and some driver transfer stuff. So I could sit here on my own and just tell you what I reckon, or I could invite one of the most prestigious, long-serving F1 journalists in the F1 paddock, and that is Joe Saywood. Hello, Joe.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Are you going to come and join us on Saturday of the Silverstone weekend, where Missed Apex is having an event in Milton Keynes, a live panel? I'd love to extend a warm invitation to you, Joe, to come and join us.
No, I'm afraid that Saturday nights I never do anything exciting on Saturday nights, as I'm busy producing magazines and newsletters for people who pay me money. Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't do any of that stuff. It's really boring. I do that on Sundays too, actually. My glamorous life in Formula One consists of sitting in hotel rooms and working.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. So I was speaking to a on-mic broadcaster, just messaging saying, hey, I'm just curious what you guys get up to on Friday, Saturday and Sunday nights, because I had half a mind to inviting important people like you to come to Missed Apex events. And the answer was, no, it's really busy. If we get a moment spare, we just go to the hotel room and sleep. It's not glamour, is it? Where's the...
No, it's not glamorous at all. People think it is. But I know that the TV folks are always doing little featurettes and they're doing rehashes of things, and they're always doing interviews. And they are as crazy as we are. Yeah. They don't do quite as silly hours as I do. But because I spend the day wandering around the paddock, sort of schmoozing folk. And then in the evening, you have to write it all down.
Yeah, where's the James Hunt of the F1 broadcasting world?
Well, there are some journalists who have to write 300 words a weekend and are paid to go and do it. So there are still some what shall I say? No, I better not say anything.
Which F1 journalists are?
Well, newspaper guys don't have a lot of things to fill, so.
All right. Well, Joe doesn't have time to relax on a Grand Prix weekend, but you do. So why not join us on the Saturday at around 8 p.m. in Milton Keynes, which is about 25-30 minutes drive out of Silverstone. But we are basically definitely going ahead. We have enough interest. What I need to know now is which of the three venues I'm talking to is most suitable for our audience size. And it's always really hard to judge. But if you could really help me decide in the next couple of days by emailing spanners@missedapex.net and just in some way indicate that you'd be happy to come down, then I'll make sure that there is a link ready for you to book. There'll be a small cover, nothing crazy, but a link for you to book to come and see us on Saturday for a quiz and some live paneling and some drinks. Nothing fancy. Come along, have fun with us. But Joe, we've had some breaking news land on our doorstep right this day, which is that the legal age, which has been 18, the Verstappen rule, is being disregarded for the miracle that is Kimi Antonelli.
Mm-hmm. I'm not in the least bit surprised. In fact, if you read the newsletter you get for free, you would have read that about 3 weeks ago, I think.
Oh, really? Okay. I did read the most recent one, and I can prove it a bit later on, but I did miss this. Isn't it a bit sort of like worthless then, having had that rule for all this time? Because the first real pushback against it, and it's caved.
No, I think if you've got somebody who's good enough, and people think he's good enough, there's absolutely no reason to have an age limit. It's just, I don't really know why it was put there in the first place. Because if you've got someone who is clearly good enough, clearly grown up enough as well, it makes sense not to block them. So there's kind of logic in it. I don't really understand the original logic.
Okay, so, I mean, the logic being that F1's super dangerous and we're letting a child on the track?
Yeah, but this child knows how to drive racing cars and has been driving racing cars since he was an embryo. So all these guys have been driving 10 years or more when they start turning up in Formula One. So
okay, I don't watch a lot of the junior series, but I have been shocked on occasion watching F3 and F2 with the driving standards in the field. And it's not so much that, they're just blocking each other and shoving them off. But, if there's a big dust cloud on track or a lack of visibility or incidents ahead, they do seem to steam through, which tells me that there is a difference between the mentality of 15, 16, 17-year-olds and grown-ups in F1.
No, I don't think age has anything to do with it. If you want the honest opinion, there are a couple of things here. One is Formula 3 is for rich kids and good kids who are supported by Formula One teams. And generally speaking, you'll find some of the rich kids are pretty hopeless. And they generally are the ones who cause the incidents. There are, of course, the youngsters who are backed by the Formula One teams are desperate to be noticed. And so they do more desperate maneuvers than one would expect from professional racing drivers. But that's because they want to be noticed. And some of them never get through because they do too many of that. And, there's a level of which you want to control your desperation while at the same time being noticed. And the best way of being noticed is not to win some silly sprint race where the grid is turned back to front, but to win the main event, and then people will take notice of you. Lots of people get excited about somebody winning a sprint race when they turn the grid 12 or 10 people round the wrong way, but it's hopeless to do that. It's rather silly. And I don't think they should do it. But, I'm in the minority, I suppose. I suppose by turning the grid around, they think there'll be lots of overtaking. But generally speaking, if you turn the grid around at Monaco, you can forget it. There's only going to be one winner.
So people must then, if we're talking seriously to, is it the FIA that decide about this age limit and getting a dispensation, then that must mean a few things. It must mean that Mercedes are deadly serious on bringing in Antonelli quickly. So he turns...
I think what it means is he turns 18 on the Sunday of the Dutch Grand Prix, which I believe is the last weekend in August. So that means that prior to that, he could have raced at Italy in September. He's not going to race for Mercedes this year, but as has been written in the JSBM newsletter some time ago and shot down in flames by a million Spaniards, it will be, if he comes in, it will be in a Williams. And the fact that they've agreed to do this is either electioneering on the part of the FIA president saying, look, fellows, would be nice, or because somebody's asked the question and got the answer.
Okay, but does that also apply for FP1 sessions? So could this be just so that he can do FP1s?
No. He does. He's already got everything he needs to do FP1 already.
And you can be 17 and do FP1?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, right.
I don't.
I've tested.
That's a good question.
I've tested the great.
I don't know. I thought.
Well, this was Christina's theory.
The super license you get for doing FP1 sessions is not a full super license. It's a sort of FP1 session license. So, to be honest, I haven't looked into it, but it's a good question.
So that was Christina's theory that perhaps it is just so they can get on with these FP1 sessions and not necessarily for a full drive this season.
Well, I think that the thing is that Williams would like to have him in the car because they need to score points, because their second driver, as we have noticed, sorry about this, American fans, but has not been delivering. And even when he does good jobs like he did in Montreal in qualifying, he then messed it up in the race. So, they need points. And it is, the level at which they need points, you can see that. The fighting at the back of the grid is far more vicious and nasty than the fighting at the front. And hence what happened at Monaco with Alpines, and hence Perez and Hasses and things. So, they need to have those points because every point can be worth tens of millions. And so this is why they need to have two competitive drivers. So Williams were thinking, well, if we get this kid Antonelli in, he's a whiz kid, we can give him some seat time. Mercedes might give us some money to give him some seat time, and we can score some more points. That all was fine up to a point. Then Mercedes had a bit of a wobble going, well, maybe it's too early. And so that went away. And then I think the Williams thinking was, well, let's just get the first driver for next year sorted out. Because originally they wanted him for 18 months. So that, Mercedes wouldn't be wobbling about whether it was too early. And Williams would have a guy for 18 months. And then it was decided, no, Mercedes will probably go for him straight away. And that means 6 months, which Williams not really that interested in, except that they need somebody quick. That's the background to it. And we'll see if it happens. But I think it all depends on when they sign Sainz. Oh,
Oh my God. Okay, you don't have to worry about that because James Vowles is so bad at this game. He's all but said. I've got a feeling they've got an agreement in principle, at least, if not actually signed, because he keeps accidentally speaking as if the deal is done. So it's now being reported that Sainz is being...
The deal is effectively done.
Yeah.
However, both sides, and I spoke to both sides in Montreal, both sides are saying, it's not done yet. Just as Esteban and Haas, both sides are saying it's not done yet. But the fact is that both of those deals are going to get across the line. I would be utterly astonished if Carlos Sainz went to Audi. If you look at, how Audi is going to do. I did a thing the other day looking at how Mercedes did and how long it took them to become winners. And Mercedes is, not a bunch of incompetents. But they started in 1991 and won a championship in 1998. So, this is what you have to look at. If you look at them as when they came into Formula One, they started the program in 1991 with Harvey.
Who was that? Sorry, have I misheard?
Mercedes.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, as an engine supplier.
Yeah, you have to learn. You have to learn how to do it. Okay. Audi are doing it the hard way because they're taking on a team as well as the engine, and Mercedes did that after they'd won the championship a few times. But it's really difficult, and people who come in, and I go on banging on about this all the time, manufacturers always come in thinking they're so damn clever, they can build cars, they know how to do this, and everyone else are morons. And every time they come in, they trip over their shoelaces, fall headfirst into the pile of cack, and then they look rather embarrassed. And they do it one after another after another.
Okay, right. Well, we've covered quite a bit of ground there, but I'm still trying to unpick the puzzle of Antonelli. So let's say the deal is...
Why is it a puzzle?
So
he's going to drive for Mercedes next year. It's not rocket science. That's not the puzzle. But where's the puzzle?
But there was a thing from Toto Wolff saying we still might surprise people with some bold driver choices. Surely they didn't mean Antonelli because everybody's assuming Antonelli.
No, that's exactly what
That's the bold thing.
That's the bold choice. Okay. It is the bold choice. Too.
Made it sound like a surprise.
Replacing Lewis Hamilton with a rookie is a bold choice.
I agree.
They're not going to. Well, who are they going to put in?
Magnussen. He's free.
Yes, of course he's free, but that's what Ganassi's there for, isn't it?
Okay, so the thing is, the last I sort of left it off was Williams were like, no, we won't just be a placeholder for some young kid, just keeping him warm before he goes to Mercedes. And then so you're now saying, well, they've changed their mind on that because, well, circumstances dictate.
Shall I just give you a bit clue here? Okay, what engine is in the back of the Williams?
It's a Mercedes, Joe.
What costs a lot of money?
Engines, Joe. And
what happens if Mercedes said, we'll give you a bit of a deal on that?
Yeah, basically, don't worry about it. The pay, if the payment gets lost in the post.
We'll see you all right. Yes. And we want our boy to have some mileage. You want him as well. So it won't be a lot of money, but because they both want the same thing. If you both want the same thing, then the actual negotiation on price is a bit more or less complicated. But fundamentally, there'll be a sort of nod. Don't worry about it. We'll sort something out for you.
Okay. Because obviously
you give our boy some mileage.
They've got to refund Sargeant for the rest of the races that he misses.
No, they don't, because Sargeant is not a paid driver.
No. Wink, wink. I'll get you. Yeah.
There are no paid drivers in Formula One at the moment, with the possible exceptions. Sorry, Mexicans. With the possible exceptions, you could claim, which is foolish to do so, really, but I'm just doing it for fun. Certainly Lance Stroll comes with strings attached, and Perez doesn't have a lot of money that comes with him. I won't say it gets him the drive, but it follows him around because Carlos Slim owns this big company called America Mobiles or whatever they're called, which is telephone company. Makes him one of the richest men in the world, and he can afford to lob some money wherever Perez goes, and has done throughout Perez's career. So, it's not making him a paid driver, but everyone who thinks that Guan Yu Zhou is a paid driver or Logan Sargeant is a paid driver are wrong.
Nah.
They are wrong.
I don't buy it. I
don't care whether you buy it or not. It's wrong.
So Williams didn't get money for Logan Sargeant joining when he started.
No, they did not. Not directly, certainly.
Not directly.
No, hang on. Because if there's a sponsor there, I don't know. I've never spent much time looking into the Williams. I mean, who is Stevens? I don't know. They're an American something. Are they there because of Logan Sargeant? Maybe, but he didn't bring them there.
Can I give you just my sofa suspicion?
You can say what you like. It's your show.
I'm not going to libel anyone here.
I keep telling you.
I'm saying my thing is that there's a big stigma with being a paid driver now, whereas it didn't used to be a problem. I think drivers are getting better at giving the money to Uncle Derek. Uncle Derek gives it to his friend's company, and then that company becomes the personal sponsor of the driver. And it's just to avoid the stigma of we paid for the seat.
Okay, that's all absolute genius. But if that was the case, how come Mick Schumacher's not in Formula One anymore?
Does he have huge personal backing? I don't know how rich he is.
Of course he does. He could have, because he's Schumacher. He's got the name Schumacher. The fact is, it doesn't work. Your theory doesn't work. If you look at Guan Yu Zhou and you look at Logan Sargeant, where they finished in Formula 2, you'll find that they're both quite good.
How many attempts did they take?
Not many.
Not many. We've got a theory in our Patreon Discord, patreon.com/missedapex, that you can directly correlate how many attempts it took them to get that result that got them into F1 to how well they eventually do in F1.
You certainly can in some cases, which is why Drugovich is still a paid driver, probably. I'm sorry, reserve driver. Sorry, I better not say that. Upset all the Brazilians as well.
Did you just say
no?
Was that a Freudian slip?
Drugovich is still a reserve driver, but he won the championship, didn't he? The last couple of champions. What's his name? The French guy who's off in America now, Théo Pourchaire, and I don't think he's coming back. That's just what happens if it takes them too long. It's a bit like if Dennis Hauger wins the championship this year, it'll be his 4th year or something. Forget it. Formula One teams ain't looking anymore.
Okay, so no money's due back to Logan Sargeant. I'm glad we could clear that up.
No, I very much doubt it.
He's going to be obviously very disappointing to be taken out of a car mid-season, and that's going to be the end of his career, isn't it?
No, it's not. He'll go to Indy cars and get paid money.
F1 career. I apologise. F1 career.
Or he could drive around in WEC. Listen, the guy's talented. He's just not quite got it all together. He's a quick driver. And I may have related in the past a conversation I had with Oscar Piastri about him. And Oscar is just going, what's going on with Logan? I just don't understand. Because he's been his teammate. He knows he's quick. We all know he's quick, but he just can't get it all together. And to be fair to Williams, they've given him lots and lots of opportunities to do it. And, after a while, you just have to say, well, we've tried. We keep trying. And they have been quite supportive. I mean, he's been under pressure, obviously, this year. But they have been supportive of him. And he just hasn't delivered. Now, if he starts delivering now, then it'll get more complicated. But he's not.
I think there was more sympathy with Schumacher because he was in a Haas with Mazepin, and that car looked legitimately undrivable, like even just keeping it on the track.
And if there was, how come he's not in a Formula One drive then?
Who, Schumacher?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know.
Nobody rates him high enough. That's it. Let's be brutal here. Sorry, Mick's had 2 years. Didn't do enough to make anyone interested. Ditto Mazepin. I mean, Mazepin, okay, the war came along, didn't help, but Mazepin was never going to get another drive anyway. So it was a fairly pointless exercise. They are guys who are not quite good enough, and they'll be very good in other championships. So, if Mazepin can go and race in Indy cars or Logan can go race in Indy cars or at the front end in WEC, they can earn good money and have good careers.
All right. So let's guess. Is this shuffling of the age so we can get into FP1 sessions, or are we thinking this is like an immediate switch in for Logan Sargeant?
I would say you'll be able to answer that after the Spanish Grand Prix this weekend when the Williams team announces Carlos Sainz, and then it'll be obvious that they'll want somebody else in for the rest of the year.
Really? So, I mean, you're talking Silverstone then, potentially?
Yes, probably.
All right. And we'll have 2 Finns on the grid then. So, Kimi Antonelli, what do you know about
Finns?
Him? Is Antonelli not? Oh, he's Italian. I'm so sorry. Because it was Kimi. Because I went Kimi Raikkonen straight away.
Yes.
I don't know. Is Kimi short for something?
Yes, it's Andrea Kimi.
I see.
Antonelli. Okay. I think he was actually called Kimi after Kimi, but he's an extraordinary young man. I mean, and he's got a lot of charisma. He's got a lot of talent, and he's great fun to be around. We're not allowed to interview him at the moment. Mercedes-Benz have banned all interviews with him because they obviously don't want him to be under media scrutiny or whatever the word is. But I've had a few chats with him, and he's a jolly nice chap. And he's very sort of, if I was trying to find an equivalent, I'd say he's like Valentino Rossi. He's got that kind of charisma.
So a little bit of a risk career-wise to go in, go against Albon, who's been doing really well this season?
Not really, because nobody's going to expect him to dominate Albon in the first 6 races, because Albon is a top class individual. But if he does a couple of performances where he's close to Albon at the very beginning, ain't going to hurt him, is it?
No. Okay. Well, that's all starting to come together then. What I found interesting was the potential deal that's being reported to Carlos Sainz, which is we'll commit to 4 years at our end, but you can leave after 2 if it turns out that we balked the 26 regulations.
No, I don't think it'd be that deal. I think it would be 2 plus 2 on both sides. And that way, if Carlos suddenly goes to sleep and does a Perez, he can be slung out halfway through.
But do you know how hard it is to be a Perez fan at the moment? Just catching strays
why
for
is
no
that?
reason.
Why is that? I mean, the whole of Mexico loves Perez, but why is it so hard to be a Perez fan? Because every time he gets in a car, something goes horribly wrong. So yeah. I'm not anti-Perez. This is what people think. I'm not. I just want to see a bloke who's doing a good job with the best car.
So I was speaking to...
This is what you're supposed to do when you're driving the fastest race car. You're supposed to win with it, or at least be close to winning, because Max is a bit special. But yeah, I'm sorry. I feel sorry for Perez fans because it is rather complicated. But,
I actually think a lot of Perez fans are reasonably happy with that new contract. So me personally, I didn't want him to get a new contract. I'm like, go be a hero at Williams or something. Go and take your cash back to the midfield and see if you can, restore the reputation. But I was speaking to Adam Rosales on our travel special, also a Perez fan. I think a lot of Perez fans are delighted with keeping that deal, and they're more than happy for him to be at least, in a front-running car. But with the pack so close, he's not looked close to looking front-running. If you painted that a different colour, you'd never know it was a Red Bull right now.
What can I say? I mean, you're just saying you're a Perez fan, and you're saying exactly what I'm saying, just in a different way.
I know, but it just feels like your one was meaner than mine.
No, I mean, it's not mean. I'm just, look, if you think mean is telling the truth, yes, I'm mean. All I'm doing is telling the truth as I see it. Now, obviously, 60 million Perez fans don't feel that way. But that's not my problem. I'm just saying this is how I see the rest of Formula One thinking. This is how I think, and this is how they think. And Perez is there because he is... Why change a successful team? Now, this year, it might be a mistake because Ferrari are very close in the Constructors' Championship. The fact they messed up last weekend and didn't score anything was helpful because Perez didn't score anything either. But, normally, if Perez has another race non-scoring and Ferrari get second and third, let's say, I think the Constructors' Championship will become very, very close indeed. So Red Bull need to watch out for that because Max last year won the Constructors' Championship on his own, didn't he, effectively? But this year it's not that easy. So, they are taking a bit of a risk on the Constructors' Championship.
Well, while we're talking about constructors and championships in general, I did a little bit of title run-in maths with 15 races to go. And now that Mercedes did the fastest laps in Canada and everybody's scared of them, if Hamilton wins every single race and Russell second, Verstappen, to win the championship, will need to get all of the fastest laps to hang on to his title. Yeah,
and if my aunt had, she would be what?
I did ask to not give me any edits for this, Joe.
Sorry, you can... I don't believe that is a rude word.
That's two times.
Well, you shouldn't have to beep that bit.
Okay. Well, I am. So
half the word.
I'm going to have to beep that bit as well now. So because Mercedes did some killer laps with Hamilton in the race, people are starting to pay attention. I'm not suggesting at all that Hamilton's going to come back and win the championship, but it is a sign, I think, that Mercedes have rattled the grid a little bit, with Red Bull now lodging an informal complaint about the Mercedes front wing. I feel like if this was last year, they don't bother.
These things are fundamentally not very relevant, I don't think. But I think that if we have a look and see what happens in Spain at a track where you can tell whether a car is good or not. We've had a couple of races where things have been a little bit topsy-turvy for different reasons. Red Bull didn't get things perfectly right in the last 2 races, and Max did okay in one of them, and that's just the way it is. It's it's clear that the grid is getting closer towards Max. But I think we'll go into a couple of races now where the Red Bull will just disappear off into the distance again. And everyone will go, oh, it's not fair.
Okay, well, I counter that. I think that the pack is closing in on them. I think Ferrari's pace has been... Have they still got big upgrades coming? But their pace has been kind of limited by other factors. So
like what? Their drivers, you mean?
Well, like it looks like they made a fundamental mistake in their setup and direction for Montreal.
Yeah, they certainly did that. Yeah, it just goes to prove. I mean, they sent out Charles Leclerc on the wrong kind of tyres at one point.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a few things wrong with Ferrari. I know Saint Fred is the miracle worker and all the rest of it, but it ain't fixed yet. So let's just not get too excited about it. I think Red Bull is still going to dominate for a while, and maybe even Perez can get some second places. But I think Mercedes have crawled a bit closer. I think the one to watch for is McLaren. To be honest, I think they're doing really well. They're not making silly mistakes. They're not necessarily getting everything perfect, but none of the teams are getting everything perfect. Even Max has had off weekends.
I'm going to argue with Joe Show, but I think McLaren have been the best performing team. Like, forget about who's got the best car. Like, if you talk about Ferrari messing up Canada and, the wrong strategy calls and some of the stuff that Mercedes has got up to with the strategy calls, I haven't seen that from McLaren. It feels like McLaren and Norris, have they?
They've made mistakes too. Norris has made mistakes. Norris is the, if you want, Lando, if he wins a race, will still find a way of complaining about it. I mean, he is not complaining about it, but analysing it in a way where he said, well, I could have done better. That's just the way he is. And it's good to be like that because then, you're always trying to improve. But they have made some errors. He's made some errors. But they're not glaring and horrible. And they are doing a great job. So, I think Piastri should have achieved more this year, but there were one or two errors along that way too, not from him.
Yeah, so it's still early in the season.
It is, yeah. It is. But I don't see, for example, Aston Martin, they're not really doing it for me this year. I think we'll see some extraordinary performances on occasion from others. People will just suddenly pop up and you go, where did that come from? But that's very circuit dependent. And I don't know, because the thing is, in the midfield there, it's so tight. And you've got Tsunoda will one week be there and Danny Rick, and it's just so hard to know who's going to be there in sort of 9th and 10th. I mean, last week, it was ironic, isn't it, really? The one thing that Williams needed was more points than Alpine. Albon gets taken out by Carlos, and Alpine score 2 lots of points, and then they're suddenly ahead. So, and this little accident like that can make a huge difference. That's 2 places in the championship that Alpine jumped up, which is about sort of $15 million.
Yeah.
Mind you, they need it. They need it.
We've got, I think, where do we go next? So I do want to, because I've got Audi on my list next, but I think Renault's
I think we should
possibly
talk about Alpine.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Alpine because, so here was my guess. My guess was that the introduction of Flavio Briatore isn't there to shore up the engineering department. It's to facilitate some kind of business. And then I read in this fantastic newsletter that I read with my eyes called JSBM, Joe Sayward Business
of
Motorsport. Oh, I didn't know it stood for that. That's so cool. I read that they might not be running Renault engines for much longer. And the thought of what is basically the Renault team looking for to be a customer for an engine supplier, to me, is not only mind-blowing, but also rubbishes the "we are not for sale" that they have been trying to put out.
No, they can. The team cannot be for sale. It's entirely possible because they're trying to promote the Alpine car. But if it costs them, if you do the numbers on what a new engine costs in 2026 over a period of 5 years until 2031, if you don't do that and buy a customer engine from someone who's good at doing it, you will save something like $750 million. Now, if you're a car manufacturer who has not succeeded for over 10 years in building a good Formula One engine, you might consider doing that. Okay, there's obviously a loss of face once you give in and try to get a Mercedes engine. But it's actually the logical thing to do, is to dump the engine program, let them go work on because in France you can't close stuff like that down, so you just send them off to work on the hypercars at Le Mans. You can win Le Mans, and then you can claim that you're still as good as ever. But in Formula One terms, an Alpine with a Mercedes engine, if Mercedes will give them one, and that's the other issue, or anybody else come to that. I mean, who in whose interest is it to give Alpine an engine? Now Alpine could insist upon it, but then the choice is the one who has the fewest customers, which would be several of them. You could have an Audi probably, but an Alpine Audi wouldn't work, would it?
Ford,
really?
Red Bull powertrain.
Yes, Red Bull powertrains, but I don't know exactly who would be the choice if they were trying to force somebody to give them an engine. And it might not be easy as an engine builder who's trying to find an alternative engine. That might be another issue. Anyway, this is definitely happening. This is definitely under discussion. Definitely 100% under discussion.
Ooh.
They won't admit to it, of course, yet, because it's obviously a slur to the poor people at Viry-Châtillon. But, the fact is they haven't had a championship-winning engine. And now the other thing which bear in mind here is that whoever is thinking of putting Flavio Briatore in charge needs their head examined, because Flavio Briatore brought hell and damnation down on the Renault team in 2009.
Crazy.
And putting him back in charge would be downright bonkers. So I have no idea what planet these people are living on, but it makes no sense at all to do that. The other thing is, engine manufacturers might go, I don't want to be associated with him because of his past record. So, I don't get it. I don't understand why anyone would even think it's a good idea, but it just tells you the kind of level of thinking that is going on inside Alpine, which is brackets none at all.
Yeah.
Or there's a boss man at Renault who's telling people what to do, who doesn't know what's going on, and the other people are too scared to say, hang on a minute, that's total. Oh, I bleeped it for you, sorry.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. I want to defend the fine folks at Viry slightly, because
I'm happy to defend them too, but they're not up to it.
Well, there was something you wrote in JSBM as well, which is that of the possible money they could be spending on engine development, they're only given a fraction to spend. And for me, that then comes from Renault. That's a problem with Renault Group.
It is absolutely a problem with Renault Group. So you can't blame the engineers per se. You can raise questions about attitude and all the rest of this stuff, but you can't blame the engineers per se. But if they're working on a 40 million budget and everyone else has got 95, no wonder it doesn't work. So, yes, you blame Renault.
Wow,
but at the end of the day, the
huge.
buck stops at the boss. The buck stops at the guy who decides on the budget. And if he decides on the wrong budget, it's his fault.
So this has been my impression from the outside of the Renault project, and I still include Alpine in that, is that they just don't seem to have had the firm commitment from the parent team, or it has at least gone up and down in waves. Is that accurate, that they've had to fight for interest from the parent team? The 5-year plans.
After what happened in 2009, it's entirely surprising they've had to fight for interest, because, they've been completely and utterly humiliated in public, to such an extent that they left the sport for 5 years before coming back to buy the remains of the Renault team that had been ruined in the Lotus era. And then they've been rebuilding it. But if you've been rebuilding it without the right amount of investment, I really don't know what you can do, because you're handicapped from the start. So, you either do it properly, or you don't do it at all. Now, they may end up doing it and just saying, okay, well, Enstone is an operation that has won championships, it works, and if we put someone else's engine in it, it would make sense. And that is very much a kind of logical decision, but there's an ego. A corporate ego question involved in that as well, but it is the logical thing to do. So I think probably we can expect to see an Alpine with another engine in it if they can find another engine.
Okay, this is just my guess without speaking to expert Joe, but I got the impression that, if you've got Briatore there, who's a businessman, he's going to end up leading a Genii type agglomeration, and it might still be called Alpine. You might still paint it Alpine colours, but it's essentially, an investment group.
No. Luca De Meo, the boss of Renault, said last week to Autocar that we are not selling. And, fair enough. And why would you sell two? The other thing is that the value of a Formula One team is going up all the time. So the more they wait, the more value there is in a team. And therefore, that's why people aren't selling racing teams at the moment, because they know that the value is going to go on going up.
And I suppose at this particular moment, with the 2026 regs just around the corner, everyone's got this slight gamble in their head that they might turn it around. So who knows? Alpine might dominate the next regulation set.
Well, they might not if they've been given 40 million a year for the last few years. They aren't going to be. I mean, the word is that they're so far behind that this is why they're considering doing this. It's as simple as that. And it's not for 25, it's for 26. It's for the new generation. So, if they have decided that they can't conceivably compete with others based on what they have and what they think others have at the moment. The thing is, we don't know what others have at the moment, but there is a general feeling in F1 that the Ferrari will be okay, Mercedes will be okay. Not sure about the Honda. The Ford Red Bull powertrains, who knows? Audi, well, in theory, yes, but, so it's very difficult to draw any conclusions because, there's no one walking around looking at all the different manufacturers and taking assessments of what they're doing. All you can do is rely on rumors and people moving from one place to another, who know some secrets about where things are at. That helps.
Okay, so while we're on the 2026 regs, maybe you can help me pick apart some of the sound bites we've had from various people. So firstly, I have to say there was confusion in the fan base, including in our own Discord, about what the announcement of that 2026 regs was and thinking that this is the final set in stone thing. And then, of course, some of the team bosses started saying, oh, this isn't going to work and started complaining about things. But it's got to be signed off by the 30th is my understanding. So that was kind of a testing the waters kind of statement by the FIA. Now, there's a couple of quotes that I found interesting. One was Adrian Newey saying, oh, well, they've clearly buckled under the pressure of one or two teams that have had too much influence. And then there was another quote from Toto Wolff recently saying, well, it's far too late to change anything significant about the engine side of the 2026 regs, which says to me that Newey was talking about Mercedes and that he's right and that Mercedes are going to defend these regulations that they feel will suit their engine. Have I read that broadly correctly?
I have no idea, to be honest, because I think that FIA thing was just because they needed to put something out and there will be a negotiation and they'll find a solution to what works. And it doesn't matter. No, it's not going to be one specific thing for one team or another team. The fact is, every team has to deal with the same set of technical regulations for chassis, and therefore, whichever is the best designed team will come out ahead. And we've got plenty of time for that. So, I think that was the FIA just sort of saying, well, we're nearly there. It should have been there a while ago, to be honest, but they haven't got around to doing that. Add to the engines, there's no way you can change the engines now. And Toto is right in that respect because the programs are already halfway through. So, I don't think there's anything really. I think there's a lot of this is to do with people on the internet with nothing to write about today, just sort of taking quotes and twisting them around to get stories. And that happens with everything all the time these days. So you just have to be very careful about who you read because there's an awful lot of spinning going on. And there's far more spinning going on than ever before.
Yeah, who's the worst at that?
Why do I want to bring down the wrath of half the world upon myself? No, it's not for me to say who the worst is. You guys can sort out. Just look at the people who get it right and the people who don't get it right. That's the best way of dealing.
Yeah, it's never been harder to pick out good journalism, which is why people should go and check out your GP Plus magazine, which you only pay for once a year, and you get all the PDFs for the year. 6 hours after the race, you still maintaining that?
And flip books, you can have it in flip book format.
I don't know what that means.
Well, a flip book is where you actually sort of click on a thing and the page turns so that you don't have to sort of scroll or use any sort of brain power at all.
Oh, okay. Where should people go to find
you have
Grand
to sign
Prix
up
Plus?
for it, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, Grand Prix Plus is to be found on grandprixplus.com, obviously enough.
Oh, there you go.
But everything can be found on flatoutpublishing.com. You can find GP Plus and all the other things I do as well.
Okay, and but also check out Joe's green notebook, which doesn't really have any F1 stuff in it, but it's like a travelogue of like, the best
you mean
pasta.
It doesn't have any F1 stuff
It's
in
all
it. It's
about
got loads of F1 stuff in
I
it.
had the linguine or the lobster thermidor at this airport. That's
but people like that too.
I
people
like it. I wasn't mocking it. I wasn't mocking it.
People like to know a little about the lifestyle, and it's a column that mixes the lifestyle with the news. And if you read down there, you'll find the news too. And also the adventures of being a Grand Prix reporter, like having your car blow up and this sort of stuff. It's all good fun.
Yep. Oh, and we haven't mentioned your toilet book for a while.
My toilet book.
Yeah, got the book with the little stories for reading on the toilet.
There's 4 of them.
Yeah. See, he's not denying it. He's not fighting it anymore. But I say this is a best sort of birthday present, Christmas present, is Joe's Fascinating Facts books, little digestible F1 stories.
Okay. Yeah. Each time you... never mind. Let's not go there.
Yeah. So, there you go, Joe. All the things are plugged. And that's because we're so grateful that you come here and spend your time on us and take us inside F1. Last thing on the 2026 regs, I was quite enthusiastic about them being a bold step forward. And we did a whole show on that with Chris. But now I think about it more, the active aero seems like such a massive faff to make up for a lack of engine grunt. I'm starting to...
but the engines are going to be just as powerful. Just wait and see. These things develop so quickly, and they're already developing vast. I mean, if you look at lap times don't go down. They do when they change the regulations, but they're back up really fast. And the engineers will find a way to sort out everything. That's what they're there for. That's why they're geniuses. That's why they're paid the big bucks. So, Formula One is not going to get any worse. If they have smaller cars and lighter cars, that's a good thing. But you don't want to have smaller cars and lighter cars if that compromises safety, particularly for the FIA. You can't do that. So there's lots of different things. And you also have to have, or there's an argument, you have to have relevance to the car industry, because otherwise manufacturers won't come. So, and I think that's a good, solid argument as well. So I think you have to have safety. You have to have industry relevance, and then you try and make the smallest, lightest cars possible. And that's been the problem, because they're heavy and big at the moment. And that's why you can't get 2 of them going alongside each other at Monaco, because that's like a pair of juggernauts trying to pass one another. It's just not possible. Or else it ends up in an unpleasant Alpine-like encounter. But
am I right in thinking they're going to ditch the hybrids anyway in the next regs? So 2030, they're already saying. So. You don't think
I would be amazed if they ditched the hybrids, because once you have synthetic fuel and you have hybridization, I think you just want to go more and more down the path of hybridization, because that's where the industry's going. And if you want the money from the manufacturers, and not just the money, you want the promotional stuff that manufacturers bring. I think we'll have more manufacturers coming in with synthetic fuel. And I think that we will see that in 31. I don't think people have come before then, but I think there's a lot of manufacturers looking at it, because Formula One is so powerful a marketing tool around the world.
It is. And so we're going to talk to a guest, not going to say who, about the American explosion. And there's no doubt that that's really put F1 on the world map. Is that going to continue? And do you think
F1 was always on the world map? It just wasn't on the world map in America in the same way it is now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was everywhere else, and always has been everywhere else.
Is that job done though?
Is it job done? Yeah, it's kind of done, but there's still more that can be done. We haven't got a race in India, almost impossible to get organized. The Chinese market can be exploited. We don't have a race in Africa. There's growth to be had there. In South America, we could use another race down there, but we can't get one. So, there's a lot of globalization, if you want to call it that, still to be done. And there's a balancing act, of course, because you don't want to upset all the old fans in Europe who don't want to lose all their races, but you've also got to get them to accept that you can't have all the races in the old world, because it's not like it used to be. The world is not just Europe. So you have to balance all of this. And, it's a difficult job to balance everything without running into trouble. And believe me, you should know that, Spanners.
Why? What have I done?
No, but it's like I do. Whenever you open your mouth, somebody jumps on it the wrong way.
Yeah. But I just ignore anyone being mean now. By the way, this is a good chance to say this. If you email me, and I hope you do, spanners at spanners@missedapex.net. If you are writing to me to have a tirade about one of my panel members, I just stop reading and delete it. So you're absolutely wasting your time. If you leave abusive comments on the YouTube, only I read it and I have a little chuckle to myself and I mod it and I just don't let it through.
No. I mean, anything that gets into abuse is instantly deleted on Twitter, on the blog. There's just no point. I know people want to rant and rave and complain and call me an idiot. That's fine. Just don't bother because you just get deleted. I mean, maybe they feel better having done it. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
But I've deleted hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands probably. I haven't added them up. And I block on Twitter too because I don't want morons coming back and doing it again, to be honest.
So let's get on to something interesting, which I should have paid more attention to in JSBM weeks ago. But all the drama around Ocon, right? And this leads us sort of from Alpine to Haas, probably, quite literally. So when the big reaction came from Bruno Famin after Monaco, and it just seemed like such a vitriolic reaction to me from anger, and it would remind me of, something I used to say to the guys, like if somebody is kicking off at work and you go, where's that come from? It's normally because there's something else going on in the background. So I would encourage the guys to, instead of kicking off and going, I'd say ask them if they're okay. And that's the same feeling I had from Famin's reaction to Ocon. And my suspicion then that I said on the ringer to Meg was, I think that's because Ocon's already made up his mind and he's gone.
Yep, I agree with that entirely.
What is going on with Ocon?
I agree that entirely. I think Ocon, there are two things. One is I don't think that the rumours about Flavio Briatore helped in that respect. I think that may be part of it because Flavio Briatore has a habit of fiddling around with drivers and messing things up. So that was one thing which I think didn't help. Secondly, the team's just been pretty useless this year. And I think Ocon has had enough. I think he had other offers. He had other good offers that he could play with. And I think he turned down Audi. And I think he chose Haas because Haas has, the potential, which we've seen this year on occasion, largely due, I think, to Nico Hülkenberg coming in and working with the engineers much more so than in previous carnations, or whatever the word is, incarnations, isn't it? Not carnations. Carnations are flowers.
Yeah, very pretty.
But I think that when you set a bunch of engineers off in the right direction, you can get results that you can't have if you're just a very fast driver who doesn't do that. And I think that Esteban's looked at the Ferrari engine potential in 26 and gone, this is a good place to be. Audi there's too many. There's just too many question marks about it, and I think Alpine's just looked at it and gone no, and I think that their sort of kickback on him going no, not interested anymore. They seem to forget, that he was the guy who won him a race. But Esteban is in a point in his career where he needs to get moving on, and they're not moving on. They're moving backwards. So I can see all of that. And, if the guys don't like it, tough, it's, again, you have to say tough, but if they are working on the kind of restrictions and budgetary arrangements that we hear talked about and some daft decisions as well about people, no wonder they're frustrated. No wonder they're fed up. No wonder they're not, if you look at what's happened in Enstone, they've wiped out almost all the good guys. I mean, not all of them. There are some very good guys still there. But they have. They've wiped out a whole generation of people who know from the old days who know how to win it. Their argument is, well, that's from the old days. But, they recently got rid of the only guy, Rob White, who made Enstone and Viry work together. And they won 2 championships in 2005, 2006, because Rob, who didn't speak a word of French, went to Viry-Châtillon and somehow, learning French as he went along.
No, he just spoke louder and slower. That's how you do it in France. Just speak louder and slower.
Okay. I'm sure that works at Viry. But, the fact is that Rob went over there and made everybody pull together. And I can't remember anybody else doing that. Cyril Abiteboul tried very hard to do that, and with moderate success. But Rob actually made it work. And to dump somebody with that much understanding, okay, he's old and he's been around, but all these changes just make no sense to me. they've destroyed a team, and they haven't replaced anybody. Well, they've replaced some people. They put some more people in, but there's no evidence that these people will eventually come good. We'll see. You can't judge until you give them a chance. But, it's not, there's a whole rebuilding process which is self-inflicted. And I don't think that it's very clever. But, let's see.
You actually said this about the staff quite early in the year on a show, that this process was happening of losing people. And I did get an email from someone who just accepted a job offer from Alpine going, well, that's bummed me out that my new place of work.
Oh, no, listen, I know people who've accepted job offers from Alpine, and they will go there, and there will be some new people coming, and they're not all going to be idiots. It's clear. But whether they can fix it up and make the thing competitive back to where it was in the time available, which isn't much time, is another question. It's just a massive, massive shift of clearing out people who, and the other thing is clearing out people who knew how long it took to do things. This is one of the things which goes back to my earlier comments about manufacturers. They come in, they think they know the answers. When they don't know the answers, they hire somebody who do know the answers. And people say, well, it's going to take you this long, and they don't believe that. And so Otmar Zafnauer told them, you're going to need to do this, that, and the other. And they went, okay, and threw him out because it was taking too long. And then some of the people that Otmar had lined up to go there go, I'm not going there if Otmar's not there anymore. And these kind of things are happening all the time. You've just got to be, okay, if you're the head of a major car company, you've got other things to worry about. The Chinese are about to come in and kill you. And, you might be worried about the French government merging you with Peugeot, whatever. But you need to spend a little bit more time thinking about Formula One, not just deciding in a split second, oh, this is the way to do it because I know best.
Joe, stop kicking. Alpine's already dead.
No, I'm not kicking them. I'm just saying that this is the mistakes that are made. And I've been around Formula One long enough to be able to say this is a mistake. I've seen it so many times. And it's just dumb. It's just dumb.
Can you imagine, like you couldn't have imagined this like 5 years ago, that you've got a not a paid driver, an on-talent driver. I know there's a lot of Esteban Ocon haters out there, but you're being far too influenced by your own fan bias. But at 27 years old, in his prime, choosing to leave a de facto works team for a bottom-end customer team such as Haas, who hasn't had the greatest success over the past recent years, that is an amazing indication of what must be going on, because I'm assuming that this is Ocon's decision to go, I'm looking for something else.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Yeah. And he's chosen Haas, so that there's a life there to be had. We don't know who's going to be.
And he chose Haas over Audi.
Yeah, this is the other thing. No one seems to want to go to Audi. So Sainz is going to be turning them down. I don't know if Tsunoda had an opportunity to turn them down.
He very much did, yes.
So Tsunoda would have turned down Audi?
No. I think Tsunoda would have taken Audi.
You reckon, yeah.
Yeah, they wanted him. And then Red Bull jumped in and said, actually, no, we want him, which creates a problem within Red Bull because they've now got 3 drivers for 2 drives. So, and that's why you can't really speculate on what happens next, because there's 2 drivers, one of which, well, there are several drivers who'll be on the market who may influence the decisions being made, and we have to wait and see when all that's confirmed. So,
but Audi is struggling. So, I mean, I will circle back to Ocon at Haas, but Audi are actually struggling to fill that seat.
Audi is struggling for various reasons. One is they've taken over Sauber, which has been in a mess for a couple of years. One is because they're coming in brand new and expecting to do the whole thing. And the other thing is that they are at the very top end. Volkswagen corporate politics is, the Borgias are positively nice people in comparison to what goes on up there. And the guy in charge was basically kicked off the board of Audi and thrown into the Formula One program. One gets the impression that this was just the best way to get rid of him, as opposed to paying him off and paying his salary. But that doesn't mean he's going to be there forever. And then he's a corporate guy, not a racing guy. So he's bringing in people he knows from the corporate world, and that's not helping the racing guys who know what they're doing, because these guys, again, just like at Renault, they come in, think they know all the answers and mess everything up. So there's a level of that going on as well. and we have to see who wins. If, at the end of the day, if Andreas Seidel is booted out of the top of that program, that the corporates have won. And if the corporates have won, the team is doomed. So, or at least doomed for a period of time, because they need to get the racing attitude back. What happened with Seidel and the other guys is the original boss of Audi, Guzman, came from BMW, and he brought a bunch of BMW people with him who knew racing. And they were the core of the Audi racing team. They're all from BMW, and they're from the BMW Formula One program back in the day. And instead, if they're going to put in a bunch of guys who don't know about Formula One, they're going to have problems. So Formula One is not easy. It's just, this is the underestimation that everybody thinks it's easy. We've won a Formula Ford race, therefore we can have a team in Formula One. We'll be fantastic,
Yeah, my feeling is that Audi come in and it's essentially going to be more or less the same infrastructure.
No, I think they'll have more money. Particularly, I mean, Sauber's got some good stuff and some good people, but it's just been sort of floating along for a number of years without really achieving a great deal. And even that, that was even the case when Fred Vasseur was there before, the change that came to this more bizarre period since him. But, it's just been floating along. It hasn't been really setting the world on fire at all. And you have to ask questions about that. And then to have a new engine supplier and a whole new engine program, and sure, they've got all the gear. I mean, Audi is going to have all the latest stuff you need, all the stuff that money can buy. But a lot of the old Audi Sport engine guys have gone elsewhere or retired because, that's what happens. So there are lots of question marks. And if you're a driver and you have a limited career span, you are going to look at those question marks and say, well, how many years have I got? I can't sit around here for 6 years before they win something. They may well win stuff in the years ahead. After all, way back when, Mercedes and Auto Union dominated Formula One, and Auto Union is Audi by another name.
I mean, they have got whisper it, but they have got two drivers at the moment. I mean, they do. They do
have two drivers at the moment, but they seem to have no interest in either of them. So, I mean,
no.
I don't necessarily understand that either, because you'd think that, even if he's a Chinese pay driver, I think is your expression.
You said there's no such thing.
Guan Yu Zhou is hugely popular in China, which is a massive market for Volkswagen. So it might actually be quite clever if he's quite a good driver and you're trying to sell lots of cars in China. But then, of course, the EU will mess it up with the politics because now they're putting tariffs on things. All this tariff stuff is just going to mess up the car industry even more. It's not going to help anything. It's not going to stop the Chinese invading the world. It's just going to take them longer.
Guan Yu Zhou. Joe Sayward confirms that Zhou Guan Yu is a pay driver. It's good that I've got that on record.
No, I did
and
not
that pay
confirm
drivers
that he was
exist.
a pay driver.
That's what the clip, that's what the edit will reflect.
So, that's completely different. I mean, if you are going to manipulate the media, Spanners, what can I say?
Well,
you are, of course, a viable person. You've admitted it many times yourself.
I am completely for sale. Just
anyone who wants to change things, just send Spanners a check.
Or merchandise.
Audi board, whatever.
Hey,
no, don't give it in on T-shirts. You get a check at least, So.
I'll change my opinion a little bit for a T-shirt, a lot for a Paddock Club pass. So how's that? Can't say fairer than that. I did promise we'd circle back to Haas because I think this is interesting. We're going to have a brand new lineup. Of course, we've got Komatsu there instead of Steiner. So I'm interested how much of an influence you think Komatsu has to steer the ship in a different direction. So we've got Behrman coming in, I think all but confirmed, and Ocon coming in, all but confirmed as well. So what does this say about Haas's direction now?
It's an interesting question because who owns the team? The team is owned by Gene Haas, so it should go in whatever direction Gene Haas wants it to go in. That may not be the same direction that other people want it to go in. So it's very difficult to say who's doing things right and who's doing things wrong because sometimes decisions are made for all the wrong reasons. But I think they're doing a great job at the moment, given what they have. And I think it would be very foolish to rock the boat too much. I think having the two drivers they're going to have next year is a very good combination. They have some very good engineers. And, these teams have a value. So what Gene Haas wants to do with it in the future, I don't know. Clearly, he doesn't want to sell it because he's turned down 1 million offers of people to buy that team. He has sold his now. He's closed down his NASCAR team actually.
Yeah,
which
there's
is
no
interesting.
Can you sell? I don't think you can sell a NASCAR team.
Yes, you can. You can sell the charters, but that's assuming the charters have a value.
But we think the commitment to the F1 team is strong. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons that Haas has got out, well, there are two reasons. One is that I think Gene lost interest in NASCAR quite a long time ago, and it was Tony Stewart who was sort of keeping it all going. And secondly, that NASCAR is in this strange situation at the moment where you don't really know what anything's worth. And I think, just get out and go. And I thought Ganassi did that a couple of years ago. He just sort of said, I'm not in NASCAR anymore. I'm done with this. I'll go and stick in Indy cars and win that. And running sports cars as well.
I think one of what I'm interested in Komatsu as a team principal, that he's not just there as a caretaker to run the team down.
No. He's a full scale operator. I got to say, he's I think he's doing a great job, and you don't argue with him anyway because he's a great kickboxer too. I've actually seen him come out of a garage and go into a little sequence of kickboxing with one of the trainers just to keep himself sharp.
And he makes sure that the journos see that, so they know not to mess with him.
I haven't got into a kickboxing moment with him yet, but I'm working on it. So.
Okay, before we go, I've got a couple of loose ends to just go right. Where do we think this loose end is going? So that might be the end for Magnussen, and no one seems to be really talking about this.
That's very true.
I like Magnussen. I've always all through his career.
He's had an awful lot of chances now.
Yeah, and he's got.
And when somebody gets thrown out of Formula One, having had lots of chances, it's very difficult to feel sorry for them because they've had lots of chances. And Kevin's had more than even he would have expected. He was quite surprised when he got back in again.
Yeah, and he's got 2 children now, so that's 6/10.
I don't know if that makes any difference.
You lose a third, 3/10 per kid.
Yeah, so goes a theory from about 40 years ago. Yeah.
How many kids? Vettel had 3 kids, and that perfectly aligns with, his.
That is true in his case. Yes.
Yeah. So in 100% of the examples we've talked about just now.
Well, Hulkenberg's got a kid.
Well, did that?
And Perez has got 3. Yeah, that works.
Oh yeah, no, there. Yeah, I think we've really got something here. And the other loose end is actually Gasly as well. So is Gasly going to stay at Alpine? And if not, who can Alpine get?
Well, I think that Gasly could go to Audi if Audi can't get all the other people on the list. There was some talk this last week of Audi going for youngsters, Drogoviches and Pourchairs and these sort of people. It's possible. It depends on who's making the decision and when that decision is made. Alpine, you got Schumacher's on their Le Mans team. You have Jack Doohan as their reserve driver, and they've been doing a lot of mileage with Jack in old cars of late. And I get the feeling that Jack is very much they like him. They could go for Guan Yu Zhou because he's Chinese and because he was a former Renault young driver as well. He was with the team for a long time. They could go for Valtteri, but I don't know if that's likely. I think it's probably not likely. I think Valtteri may be struggling to stay on, but he could get a drive also at Audi. But then you've also got Danny Rick coming on the market, Logan Sargeant coming on the market, and Kevin on the market. So these guys could be in there among the thing. But at the end of the day, I don't know what they're going to do because thus far they've made so many strange decisions that nothing would surprise me. And if Gasly went off to Audi, I wouldn't be wholly surprised either.
Poor Jack Doohan only got an in-lap and an out-lap, I think, for his FP1 session. But I saw him at a panel, and he is a mightily impressive speaker, held the room, very charismatic. He seems like fully just on a path and set. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get an F1 shot from that criteria.
I was talking to his old man the other day. This is great name dropping, isn't it? I was talking to Mick the other day, and he said that he's very impressed by his son. And he doesn't, he didn't mean that in a sort of paternal way. It was like he just won't shut up. He just keeps on pushing, and it was really in almost in a kind of, not in awe, I wouldn't say, but he was just he was impressed by his own kid having that energy and that drive to be successful. And I think he does. Certainly, he's always chasing me around the paddock, trying to get me to like him and write nice things about him. I think he's a nice kid. Has he done enough to make it in Formula One? He's quite quick, but is he quick enough? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I think his just general energy and push will probably help him a lot.
Yeah, you're allowed to name drop, Joe. You're a journalist. Biggest name dropper I ever met, Mick Jagger. I did a jokes. Joe, go and everyone should go and follow Joe's stuff. I'll put the links in the show notes below. Joe, if you could fire me the most convenient links, but it is flatoutpublishing.com. There we go. I remembered it. Flatoutpublishing.com. Get in touch with me in the next couple of days if you think you want to join us in Milton Keynes. Obviously, it's not good enough for Uncle Joe, but we will be there with Brad. Oh, Matt's going to fly over. Joe, come on. Brad Philpott, Matt Trumpets, Kyle Power from our MotoGP podcast. Are we really not tempting you? You're inhuman. Alex Van Gien, Antonio Rankin. There's going to and Dan Drury as well. Engine Mode 11. Star-studied in our little world. Star-studied cast, but no, not good enough for Joe.
Maybe I can find an AI bot will do my work for me.
Skype in, Joe. Anyway, thank you so much. Go and follow Joe at Joe Sayward. Follow me at Spanners Ready. And until next time, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Inside F1 with Joe Sayward on Missed Apex Podcast.
Marvelous.